So now we will be starting up with chapter number 3, which talks about the arts of the Mauryan period. We only have some 21% of the battery left, which I think should suffice for this chapter's reading. So without wasting any time, let's begin with the chapter. 6th century BCE marks the beginning of new religious and social movements in the Gangetic Valley in the form of Buddhism and Jainism, which were part of the Shraman tradition. I do not know what that means. Both religions became popular as they opposed the Varna and the Jati system of the Hindu religion. Magadha emerged as a powerful kingdom and consolidated its control over the other regions. By the 4th century BCE, the Mauryas established their power, and by the 3rd century BCE, a large part of India was under the Mauryan control. Ashoka emerged as the most powerful king of the Mauryan dynasty, who patronized the Buddhist Shraman tradition in the 3rd century BCE. Religious practices had been many dimensions and were not confined to just one particular mode of worship of Yakshaka. Yakshaka is like a form of a monster-like figure which has inverted sharp teeth. Coming back, and mother goddess were prevalent during that time. So Yakshaka is basically like Dwarpal. So multiple forms of worship existed. Nevertheless, Buddhism became the most popular social and religious movement. Yakshaka worship was very popular before and after the advent of Buddhism, and it was assimilated in Buddhism and Jainism. So, before you enter a particular temple or a sacred spot, at the doorstep you will find the figure of Yakshaka, which resembles a Dwarpal like demon figure. You may think that it is present over there to ward off the evil spirit, but actually it's asking you to leave all your fear behind and then enter into the sacred spot with all your mind, body, and soul. This is the pillar capital and the abacus with stylized lotus. This is known as the cushioned capital. This is the lion capital, borrowed from Ashoka's reign. This is the Dharma Chakra wheel. There is elephant. Elephant is basically symbolic of Buddhist religion, and also lion over elephant has been used by Rashtrakuta kings or the Chalukya kings to say that Hinduism has prevailed over Buddhist traditions. You might find these sculptures at, suppose, Ellora and also Elephanta caves. You can check them out. Now, pillars and sculptures in rock cut architecture. Construction of stupa and vihara. So there are two kinds of designs in monastery. No, that's not exactly what it is. Vihara is basically a place where the Buddhist student, a preacher, a priest stays. It is a permanent spot where they sleep, they spend most of their time, they study there. It's like a living quarter for these monks, and Chaitya is the actual place which has been inspired from the stupa design, and this is where you pray. And alright, moving ahead. As part of the monastic establishment became part of the Buddhist traditions. However, in this period, apart from stupa and vihara, stone pillars, rock cut caves, and monumental figures, sculptures were carved at several places. So we have three kinds of major designs. First, we have rock cut caves. Imagine um, stone where you carve out rock, you hollow it out from the inside, and you make it into a monastery. Then, next up, we have rock hewn. Rock hewn is basically you are carving out a stone from the top and from the front, and you make up the whole structure. For example, the Ellora caves, right? And the Ajanta caves are best example of rock cut caves. Then we have stone built, which is like you are bringing different parts and stones from all around you, and you're like building it up from the ground up. Okay. Okay, and monumental figure sculptures were carved at several places. The tradition of constructing pillars is very old, and it may be observed that erection of pillars were prevalent in the Achaemenid Empire as well, but towards the far west. But the Mauryan pillars are different from Achaemenid pillars. The Mauryan pillars are rock cut pillars, thus displaying the carver's skills, whereas the Achaemenid pillars are constructed in pieces by masons, stone built basically. Stone pillars were erected by Ashoka, which have been found in North Indian parts of Mauryan Empire with inscriptions engraved on them. The top portion of the pillar was carved with capital figures like the bull, the lion, the elephant. All the capital figures are vigorous and carved, standing on a square circular abacus. This is the abacus. Abacuses are decorated with stylized lotuses. Some of the existing pillars with capital figures were found at Basra, Bakhira, Loria, Nandgarh, and Rampurva in Bihar, Sankisa and Sarnath in Uttar Pradesh. Sarnath is where Buddha gave his first sermon. The Mauryan pillar capital found at Sarnath, particularly known as the Lion Capital, is the finest example of the Mauryan sculptural tradition. It is also our national emblem. It is carved with considerable care, voluminous, roaring lion figures firmly standing on a circular abacus, which is carved with a figure of a horse, a bull, a lion, and an elephant. In vigorous movement executed with precision, showing considerable mastery in the sculptural techniques, this pillar capital symbolizing Dharma Chakra Paravatana, the first sermon by the Buddha, has become a standard symbol of the great historical event in the life of Buddha. Monumental images of Yakshaka, Yakshini, an animal pillar, columns with capital figures, rock cut caves belonging to the 3rd century BC have been found in different parts of India. It shows the popularity of Yaksha worship and how it became part of the representation in Buddhist and general religious movements. Large statues of Yakshaka and Yakshini are found at many places like Patna, Vidisha, Mathura. These monumental images are mostly in standing position. One of the distinguishing elements in all these images is their polished surface. The depiction of faces is in full round with profound cheeks and physiognomic detail. One of the finest examples is a Yakshi figure from Didarganj, Patna, which is tall and well built. It shows sensitivity towards depicting the human physique. The image has a polished surface, so this is one of the Yaksha Parakram. Okay, this is very different than what I thought because I have mostly encountered the Southeast Asian designs or the East Asian designs from Thailand and Cambodia. This gives a very, it's very indigenous to our region. Terracotta figures show a very different delineation of the body as compared to the sculptures. Depiction of a monumental rock cut elephant in the Holi in Odisha shows modeling is round with linear rhythm. It also has a Shogun rock edict. All these examples are remarkable in their execution of figure representation. The rock cut cave carved at Barabar Hills near Gaya in Bihar is known as Lomas Rishi Cave. The facade of the cave is decorated with a semicircular chaitya arch as the entrance. The the arch is like a leaf-like figure, right? It's 3/4 of a circle. The elephant frieze carved in high relief on the chaitya arch shows considerable movement. The interior hall of the cave is rectangular with a circular chamber at the back. Not sure if it is rectangular, it's usually square shaped. But since NCRT tells, so we are going to believe it. The entrance is located on the side wall of the hall. The cave was donated by Ashoka for Ajivika sect. The Lomas Rishi cave is an example of this period, but many Buddhist caves of the subsequent periods were excavated in eastern and western India. Mostly Western India. Western India's tradition died by the time Rashtrakuta came, or the Chalukya of Badami or Vatapi started reigning over the region. Okay. Next page. Due to popularity of Buddhism and Jainism, stupas and viharas were constructed on a large scale. However, there are also examples of a few Brahmanical gods in the sculptural representation. It is important to note that the stupas were constructed over the relics of the Buddha at Raja Garha, Vaishali, Vitha, Deepa, Pava in Bihar, Kapilavastu, Alakappa and Ramgaram in Nepal, Kushinagar and Peplavina in Uttar Pradesh. The textual tradition also mentions construction of various other stupas or the relics of Buddha at several places including Avanti and Gandhara, which are outside the Gangetic Valley. Gandhara is in Afghanistan, if I'm not wrong. Stupa, Vihara and Chaitya are part of Buddhist and Jaina monastic complexes, but largest number belong to the Buddhist religion. One of the examples of the structure of a stupa is the 3rd century BCE is at Beirut in Rajasthan. The great stupa at Sanchi, which will be discussed later, was built with bricks during the time of Ashoka and later it was covered with stone and many new additions were made. So the stupa at Sanchi served as a prototype of how the stupa complexes should be based on. Right, there is an Anda Akar, and Sachi is where Buddha's bodily relics are situated at, which means his eyes, hair and bones and teeth have been kept there. And there is a chhatri, and there are a lot of things that make up a stupa, and how there is a circumambulation where the devotee can come and go around the stupa. It has been designed so. Now moving forward, subsequently many such stupas were constructed with shows the popularity of Buddhism. One is also in Amravati in Maharashtra. The others we have talked about in Aurangabad. Place probably started building during the reign of Kalchuri Empire. Now, from the 2nd century BC onwards, we get many inscriptional evidences mentioning donors and at the time their profession. The pattern of patronage has been a very collective one, and there are very few examples of royal patronage. Patronage range from lay devotees to Gahapatis and kings. Donations by the guilds are also mentioned at several sites. However, there are very few inscriptions mentioning the names of artisans such as Kanha at Pitalkhora and his disciple Balaka at Kondane caves in Maharashtra. Artisans Categories like stone carvers, goldsmiths, stone polishers, carpenters, etc., also mentioned in the inscriptions. This is the Lomas Rishi cave entrance detail. The one we talked about in was situated at Bihar. Look at the Chaitya's entrance. This is a three-fourth. Um, this is the facade of the cave, which has been decorated by a three-fourth length circle, which resembles a leaf. Right, and this is the elephant at Dholi, another representation of Buddhism. The lion capital of Sarnath. Look, there's a horse, there's a bull, there are lions, um, four in total. This is the Dharma Chakra, resembles the Dharma Sutra. Dharma Chakra is basically the teaching, which talks about the teachings of the Buddha, and this is the inverted lotus capital, right? The lion capital, discovered more than 100 years ago at Sarnath near Varanasi, is generally referred to as Sarnath Lion Capital. This one is of the finest example of the sculpture from Mauryan period, built in the commemoration of the historical event of the first sermon or Dharma Chakra Parvatana by the Buddha at Sarnath. The capital was built by Ashoka. The capital originally consisted of 5 component parts: the shaft, which is broken in many parts now, a lotus bell base, a drum on the bell base, which bell base with 4 animals proceeding clockwise, the figures of 4 majestic endorsed lions, and the crowning elements. Dharma Chakra, a large wheel, was also a part of the pillar. However, this wheel is lying in broken conditions and is displayed in the site museum at Sarnath. The capital without the crowning wheel and the lotus base has been adopted as the national emblem of independent India. Now kept in the Archaeological Museum at Sarnath, the capital has 4 lions firmly seated back to back on a circular abacus. The lion figures of the capital are very impressive and massive. The monumentality of the image is easily noticeable. The facial musculature of lion is very strong. The inversed lines of the lips and its subsequent effect of projection at the end of the lips show the sculptor's observation for naturalistic depictions. Right, look at the lips, look at the whiskers, the eyes, beautiful. The lion appears as if they have held their breath. The lines of the mane are sharp and follow the conventions that were in practice during the time. The surface of the sculpture is heavily polished, which is typical of Mauryan period. Their curly manes have protruding volume. The weight of the body of each lion is firmly shown by stretched muscles of the feet. The abacus has the depiction of chakra wheel having 24 spokes in all 4 directions, and bull, a horse, an elephant, and a lion. Between every chakra is finely carved. The motif of the chakra becomes significant as a representation of the Dharma Chakra, the entire Buddhist art. Each animal figure, despite sticking to the surface, is voluminous, its posture creating movements in the circular abacus. Despite having limited space between each chakra, these animal figures displayed considerable command over the depiction of the movement in a limited space. The circular abacus is supported by an inverted lotus capital. Each petal of the lotus is sculpted, keeping in mind its density. The lower portion has curved planes neatly carved. Being a pillar image, it was conceived to be viewed from all sides, thus there are no foundations of fixed viewpoints. A lion capital has also been found at Sachi but is in a dilapidated condition, the motif of the lion capital pillar continued even in the subsequent period. There's also the official symbol, used as an official symbol of the government of India. This is the Didarganj Yakshini. Beautiful. Look at her figurine. This is very S shaped. The S shape of the body is called as a Tribhanga figure, right? Her jewelry, very minimal clothing on the top. Alright, this looks like a lion cloth. She's holding something in her hand. There are jewels. There's a headdress. She's wearing anklet like jewel on her leg, on her feet. Okay, she's also having a kamarband. Not sure what this particular thing is, and look, her hair is also tied in a bun. Okay, the good thing is that she's been discussed. The life-size standing image of Yakshini holding a chauri fly whisk from Didarganj near modern Patna is another good example of the sculptural tradition of Mauryan period. Kept in Patna Museum, it is a tall, well-proportioned, freestanding sculpture in a round made in sandstone with a polished figure. The chauri is held in the right hand, whereas the left hand is broken. The image shows the sophistication in the treatment of the form and medium. The sculptor's sensitivity towards the round, muscular body is clearly visible. The face has round, fleshy cheeks, while the neck is relatively small in proportion. The eyes, nose, and lips are sharp. Folds of muscles are properly rendered. The necklace beads are in full round, hanging to the belly. The tightening of the garment around the belly creates the efforts of a bulging belly. The lower garment has been rendered with great care. Every fold of the garment to the leg is shown by the protruding line clinging to the legs, which also create a somewhat transparent effect. The middle band of the garment falls till the feet. Thick bell ornament adorn the feet. The image stands firmly on its leg. Heaviness in the torso is depicted by heavy breasts. The back is equally impressive. The hair is tied in a knot at the back. The back is bare. Drapery at the back covers both legs. The fly whisk is in the right hand, is shown with incised lines on the back of the image. So a fly whisk is basically like a tool that is used to swat flies, or basically it's like a hand fan. Then this is a stupa. People are worshipping it. This particular detail, this particular, what you can say, pictorial representation of stupa is present at Berhut. We're almost done with it, so let's summarize. The method of working was collective in nature. At times, only a specific portion of the monument is said to have been patronized by a particular group. Traders recorded their donation along with their place of origin. In the subsequent centuries, stupas were elaborately built with certain additions like the enclosing of the circumambulatory path with railing and structural decoration. There were numerous stupas constructed earlier, but expansions of their new additions were made in the 2nd century BCE. The stupa consists of a cylindrical drum and a circular anda with hermika and chhatra on the top, which remain consistent throughout the minor variations and change in shape and size. Apart from circumambulatory path, gateway were added. Thus, with the elaboration in stupa architecture, there was ample space for the architects and sculptor to plan elaboration and to carve out images. During the early phase of Buddhism, Buddha is depicted symbolically through the footprints. Stupas, lotus throne, or some people call it the lion throne, no idea why, the chakra, etc. There is also Pushpapani and Vajrapani, which have not been discussed, but those are also representations of Buddha. This indicates either simple worship or paying respect, or at the times depict historization of life events, or they could be coming from the earlier sect of Buddhism, basically the Theravada type, which was more simple. It was during the time of Mahayana variant that Buddhism became more grand in its depictions, and the size of Buddha was also life sized and probably huge. Uh, Sometimes Buddhism also had didactic reasons for making it simple. Now, gradually, the narrative became a part of the Buddhist tradition. Thus, events from the life of Buddha, the Jataka story, previous lives of Buddha, were depicted on the railing and the torans of the stupa. Mainly synoptic narrative, continuous narrative, and episodic narrative are used in pictorial tradition, while events from the life of Buddha became an important theme in all the Buddhist monuments. The Jataka stories also became equally important for sculptural decorations. I can discuss one or two story. There was this king, Vapi. Uh, he saw a pigeon being hunted by an eagle, and he asked the eagle to spare the life of the pigeon, and as a replacement he would provide a portion of his own flesh to the eagle, and the eagle agreed. And then there was a weighing machine that was being brought about, and on one side the pigeon was weighed, and on the other side the king took out a piece of his flesh. Now we will see that the size of the pigeon kept on growing, and the king realized that it almost resembled the size of his own. Um, and he realized that he'll have to give his life up in order to save that pigeon, and he did that. That's a beautiful Jataka story. The other one is about a six tusked elephant king. He mistreated his wife, and what we can say, he disowned her and exiled her into the forest where she died. She was reborn as a human queen, and in order to take revenge, she asked one of the hunters in a kingdom to uh, bring all the six tusks of the elephant king. And the king later realized his mistake when the hunter came and revealed who the human queen was, and the king laid down his life um, for his um, um, for his wife. Yeah, those are some of the stories. You'll have to read more. Now, important theme in all Buddhist monuments, the Jataka stories also became equally important for the sculptural decoration. The main events associated with Buddha's life, which were frequently depicted, were events related to the birth, renunciation, enlightenment, Dharma Chakra Parvatana, and Mahapari-nibbana, liberation from the cycle of birth. Among the Jataka stories that are frequently depicted are Chandata Jataka, Vidur Pandita Jataka, Ruru Jataka, Sibbi Jataka. I just discussed the Sibbi Jataka, and Vesantara Jataka. This is about the Naga king, I believe. And the Shama Jataka. We'll have to look them up. Do you? Coming to the exercise questions, we're just going to do a quick overview. Do you think that the art of making sculptures in India began during the Mauryan period? Not really. Sculptures were also made during Indus Valley civilization, as we have noticed in the previous chapter. Most probably the places of worship, and these sculptors being embedded in these temples is one of the things that we might notice on the facades and the entrance and the gateways. Now, what was the significance of the stupa and how did the stupa architecture develop? Stupa was basically made to protect the relics of the Buddhist priest, the Buddha himself, their work, their bodily remains, and to make them as a place of worship. They were of two types. There were viharas, and there were chaityas. We have discussed them in the chapter. Okay, which were the four events in the life of Buddha which have been depicted in the different forms of Buddhist artists? What did these events symbolize? So there are basically 8 events. I do not know why they have been reduced to 4. His birth at Lumbini, Nepal. Then he's leading a royal life and he renounces everything. His young son Rahula, his wife, leaves of his kingdom in order to lead a aesthetic life. Then he gains enlightenment under Bodhi tree, and he's protected by a flood. Uh, and then he gives his first sermon at Sarnath. Then he also makes non-believers into believers. Then he leads a journey to the heaven where he meets his mother Maya and explains her, or like provides her the enlightenment. He comes back and then he is said to be in a reclining position where he ultimately ends his cycle of life, of rebirths. Yeah. So, what are the Jatakas? How do the Jatakas relate to Buddhism? Find out. Jatakas are about the previous lives of Buddha. And yeah, as we have seen, they're like telling about his birth, renunciation, enlightenment, Dharma Chakra, Parvatana, Mahaparibana, liberation from the cycle of birth. I think we are done in this chapter. Thank you.